Hey everyone, this is the fourth in a series of lectures on verbs that you should use either infrequently or not at all. We've had one on passive voice, we've had one on linking verbs, we've had one on phrasals, and now this one on Anglo-Saxon. Some people call them Anglo-Saxon verbs, some people call them Old English verbs. They're verbs that have been in the language for a really long time, and as a result, they're pretty common. Something they have in common is they tend to be all very one-syllable words. So I have some examples here, and the other way that you know you have an Anglo-Saxon verb is looking at how irregular the verbs are. So, to know, say, see, so, tell, all one syllable, all words that you all know and that when you're writing your paper, you just kind of grab at them without thinking about, is there something a little bit more polished? And then look, if this was a regular verb, to know, knowing, knowed, would have been the verb form here, but they all have slightly irregular forms compared to most verbs. So, one syllable, pretty basic. Occasionally if you use them, like if you want to use, of all these, probably no. If you wanted to use no, like once a paragraph, that would be fine. Now, I want you to know that not all Anglo-Saxon verbs are taboo or something to be avoided. So I have a list here of words that have been in the language as long as the ones that we just looked at, but are much more interesting. So, to bind, to bruise. Notice they're all very physical kind of words. To clench, that's a great word, to clench. To dab, and then a word that's very closely related, to dabble. So I'm going to dabble in carpentry this summer. These I don't see at all in your papers, words like these. So it's not, if you type in Anglo-Saxon words, and then a Wikipedia page is going to come up with a list of every single one of them. And some of them are really good, and some of them are pretty boring. If you want to, you can just look for the ones that you kind of know, but that you wouldn't have come to your consciousness very quickly, and then maybe try to use the more interesting ones. Okay, so not all Anglo-Saxon verbs are bad. And then the ones that I do kind of want you to try using, even though it's going to be a little bit difficult, are Latin-based verbs. Latin or Greek, but most of them are Latin. And how do you know if a verb is Latin-based? Well, look at these examples here. To abduct, abdicate, contradict, ascribe, conflate. Now, I bet you know probably contradict, and I bet you know abduct. Of the list here, those are the two I'm guessing you know. The other ones you may ascribe, you may be a bit fuzzy on. Conflate, you may be a bit fuzzy on. So you should choose Latin verbs that you know. They're, I don't make up these rules. I don't even buy them, but the people out there who look at cover letters, who look at papers that you write for your junior or senior courses, they have a bias that Latin verbs are more educated, sophisticated, show that you have, I don't know, a better brain. I don't know. It's all a bit strange. So how do we know? Well, they're big on prefixes. So each of these have a prefix. And then some, not any of these, but some also have suffixes, little endings that you put at the end of the word. I should have thought of one that did have. So the prefix means something, and then the core part, the root of the word, means something as well. So ducare is the Latin verb form, and then you just put an ab that changes the meaning of the word. So these are multisyllable words, always have at least 2 syllables, oftentimes 3 or 4. Try using some of these. In the course content, I have lists. I think there are 4 different pages of cool verbs that you can use, and they're often just lists of Latin verbs that are used in academic writing frequently. What I would do is don't use a word that you're not comfortable in using. So if you look at, let's just say ascribe. Let's say you really don't know what ascribe means. But you run across it in a thesaurus. Let's say you look up a word and you see that a synonym for it is ascribe. I wouldn't just choose that word that you don't know what it really is, because I guarantee it has a slightly different meaning than probably what you want. That happens all the time. A student they'll use ascribe, and then I'll be like, that's not, you've chosen not the right word. So it's always best if you stick with the words that you've heard and that you're pretty comfortable in using. Even if they're not quite as fancy as other words, over time you're going to work up to the other words. Like, you might not be ready for abdicate, but at some point you will, if you keep, writing and reading and giving talks and all that stuff. Okay? So try some Latin verbs that you know, and also try maybe some Anglo-Saxon words that don't appear as often, that are fresh and strenuous and, have some energy behind them. Okay? Good luck. I know you can do it.